It begins with a sound as recognizable as a human heartbeat, yet as mysterious as a desert mirage. A 12-string acoustic guitar picks out a melody, instantly evocative, imbued with a sense of weary travel, perhaps a touch of Spanish romance, maybe something darker, something ancient. Then, the bass enters, a pulsing, hypnotic rhythm, followed by the subtle shimmer of cymbals. It's a sound that immediately transports you. You can almost feel the dry desert air, see the shimmering heat haze on a long, empty highway. It's the sound of arrival, of weary anticipation. It's the introduction to Hotel California. Released in late 1976, the Eagles' magnum opus became more than just a song. It became a phenomenon, a global anthem, a permanent fixture on classic rock radio, a rite of passage for aspiring guitarists attempting its intricate, legendary dual solo. Its haunting melody and evocative opening lines. On a dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair, warm smell of colitas rising up through the air, are etched into the collective consciousness. Millions, perhaps billions, have sung along, picturing that mission bell, the pink champagne on ice, the ghostly figures dancing in the courtyard. But what is this place? What is the Hotel California? For decades, speculation has run rampant. Is it a real hotel? Some pointed to actual establishments in Baja, California, or along Route 66, searching for architectural clues or local legends, hoping to find the physical embodiment of the song's mystery. Is it a coded reference to a mental institution, like the Camarillo State Hospital, which indeed overlooked a highway and whose imposing structure could resemble a forbidding hotel, a place where people were trapped? A commentary on hedonism, the pursuit of pleasure above all else, a theme certainly relevant to the rock and roll lifestyle of the era, a literal gateway to the underworld, run by unseen, possibly malevolent forces, with the lyrics hinting at rituals and trapped souls, fueled by the album cover's twilight imagery and lines about the beast. The song's enigmatic lyrics, coupled with the band's own rock and roll mystique, have fueled countless theories, turning Hotel California into one of popular music's most enduring mysteries. The truth, however, is both simpler and far more profound than any single explanation. Hotel California is not a place you can find on a map. It is a state of mind. It is a chilling, brilliantly crafted allegory for the seductive, ultimately soul-crushing nature of excess. A commentary on the dark, decadent side of the American dream as it manifested in the sun-drenched, dream factory landscape of Southern California in the mid-1970s. It's a cautionary tale about the music industry, the trap of fame, and the terrifying realization that paradise can quickly become a gilded cage. This is the story of how the Eagles, at the absolute peak of their fame, crafted a masterpiece that wasn't just about their world, but a warning about the very dream they were living. A dream from which, as the song chillingly concludes, you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. To understand the darkness lurking within Hotel California, one must first understand the journey the Eagles took to reach its gates. Formed in Los Angeles in 1971, the original lineup, Glenn Frey from Michigan, Don Henley from Texas, Bernie Leadon from Minnesota, and Randy Meisner from Nebraska, came together almost by chance, initially assembled as Linda Ronstadt's backing band for a summer tour. They were young, ambitious musicians drawn individually to the magnetic pull of Los Angeles, the city that was rapidly becoming the new center of the American music universe. They found themselves part of the burgeoning Southern California country rock scene, This scene, centered around venues like the Troubadour Club in West Hollywood, was a unique melting pot. It blended the harmonies and songwriting traditions of folk, like Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and country music, like Graham Parsons' work with the Flying Burrito Brothers, with the amplified energy of rock and roll. It was the sound of artists like the Byrds in their later phases, Buffalo Springfield, Graham Parsons, Jackson Browne, and Ronstadt herself. Music that felt both rustic and modern, capturing the specific geography and atmosphere of the American West, with its wide-open spaces and its Hollywood dreams. Their early sound was a perfect distillation of that scene. After deciding to form their own band, encouraged by Ronstadt and signed by David Geffen to his nascent Asylum Records label, they released their self-titled debut album in 1972. Recorded in London with producer Glyn Johns, known for his work with the Rolling Stones and The Who, the album immediately established their signature sound. Sun-kissed harmonies, often featuring Randy Meisner's soaring high notes, acoustic guitars blended with gentle electric licks from Bernie Leadon's Telecaster and Glenn Frey's rhythm work, and lyrics, primarily penned by Frey and Henley, or sourced from collaborators like Jackson Browne and J.D. Souther, that spoke of easy living, desert landscapes, and romantic yearning. The album yielded immediate hits like Take It Easy, co-written by Frey and Browne, Witchy Woman, with its slightly darker, more mystical vibe, and Peaceful, Easy Feeling, written by Jack Temchin. These songs defined the laid-back, denim-clad, vaguely countercultural vibe of early 70s California. They sang of freedom, open roads. Take It Easy literally mentions Winslow, Arizona, putting the tiny town on the map forever, and finding love under turquoise skies. They were, in essence, selling the California dream back to the rest of America, packaging the post-hippie wanderlust spirit into perfectly crafted 3-minute pop songs. Their success was rapid and immense. Albums like Desperado, a bold but commercially disappointing concept album about Old West outlaws, which initially underperformed but later became a classic. On the Border, which saw them consciously toughening their sound, partly recorded in the rock environs of Criteria Studios in Miami and adding guitarist Don Felder. And One of These Nights followed, each refining their sound and expanding their audience. On the Border produced their first #1 single, Best of My Love, a gentle ballad that cemented their mainstream appeal, even though it represented a sound the band was already moving away from, causing some internal friction. But it was One of These Nights in 1975 that truly catapulted them into the stratosphere. The title track, with its disco-inflected groove and Henley's searching lyrics, hit #1, as did the sweeping ballad Lion Eyes and the high-flying Take It to the Limit, featuring Randy Meisner's signature vocal performance that became a nightly test of endurance on tour. They were no longer just a successful band. They were arguably the biggest band in America. They had achieved the dream they had set out to capture. But the California dream, particularly the version peddled by the music industry, had begun to curdle. The idealistic, communal spirit of the late 60s, epitomized by the Laurel Canyon scene from which many country rock artists emerged, a scene documented with both fondness and melancholy by artists like Joni Mitchell, had largely evaporated by the mid-70s. It was replaced by something far more cynical, more corporate, and more hedonistic. Los Angeles had become the undisputed center of the music business, a place awash in money, ambition, and readily available temptations. Record companies operated like feudal kingdoms, showering successful artists with cash and perks, creating an environment of intense competition and pressure. Studio budgets ballooned, and perfectionism became the goal, sometimes at the expense of spontaneity. The counterculture's quest for spiritual enlightenment and social change had, for many, devolved into a relentless pursuit of pleasure and material success. Substance use, particularly involving stimulants like cocaine, became pervasive, fueling marathon recording sessions and late-night parties, but also contributing to burnout and damaged relationships. The era became known as the me decade, a time of introspection that often tipped over into self-absorption and excess. The Eagles found themselves at the very epicenter of this transformation. They were no longer the easygoing folk rockers singing about peaceful feelings. They were multi-platinum superstars, living lives of immense privilege and intense pressure. They navigated a world of Learjets, lavish parties hosted in sprawling mansions, demanding executives pushing for the next hit single, and the constant, destabilizing effects of immense fame. Privacy vanished. Every move was scrutinized. The camaraderie that had initially defined the band, four musicians finding harmony together, began to fray under the weight of egos, creative differences, and the sheer exhaustion of maintaining their position at the top. The meticulous recording process, driven largely by Henley and Frey's perfectionism under the guidance of producer Bill Shimchick, who had taken over from Glyn Johns after Desperado, created friction. The demands of constant touring strained relationships. Success itself became a kind of trap. Don Henley and Glenn Frey, the band's primary songwriters and de facto leaders, grew increasingly weary of the country rock label. They felt constrained by it, seeing it as too limiting for their ambitions. They wanted to create something harder, something more substantial, something that reflected the complex, often darker realities of the world they now inhabited. They were keenly aware of the excesses surrounding them, the hollowness beneath the glamorous facade. They saw friends and contemporaries succumbing to the pressures and temptations of the rock and roll lifestyle. Substance abuse was rampant, relationships crumbled, and the initial joy of creation often gave way to the business of maintaining a brand. They felt the shift in the cultural mood, the sense that the party was getting out of hand, that the dream was revealing its nightmarish underside. The optimism of the early 70s was giving way to a more jaded, post-Watergate cynicism. It was against this backdrop that the band began work on their next album. The internal dynamics had shifted. Bernie Leadon, the member most rooted in traditional country and bluegrass, had left in late 1975. His departure was symbolic. He reportedly poured a beer over Glenn Frey's head during one argument, signifying his frustration with the band's harder rock direction and the escalating hedonism. He was replaced by Joe Walsh, a celebrated guitarist known for his raucous, hard-rocking style with the James Gang and his successful solo career, Rocky Mountain Way, Life's Been Good. Walsh's arrival signaled a definitive shift away from the band's country roots towards a more stadium-ready rock sound. He brought a different energy, a wilder edge, and formidable guitar skills that would perfectly complement Don Felder's precise playing. The stage was set for a new statement. Henley and Frey wanted to create a concept album, a collection of songs that would serve as a grand, metaphorical commentary on the state of America, the nature of fame, and the specific, strange ecosystem of Southern California. They saw Los Angeles not just as a city, but as a microcosm of the American experience, a place where dreams were manufactured, pursued, and often destroyed. They needed a central image, a unifying symbol for this exploration of disillusionment and decay. They found it in the haunting, flamenco-tinged instrumental demo brought to them by guitarist Don Felder. Felder, living in a rented beach house in Malibu, was tinkering with his guitar on a sunny afternoon. He began playing a melody, a progression of minor chords, specifically B minor, F sharp major, A major, E major, G major, D major, E minor, F sharp major, with a distinct Latin flavor, filtered through a Leslie speaker to give it a swirling, ethereal quality. He recorded the instrumental piece on a simple teak 4-track machine in his spare bedroom, layering acoustic and electric guitars, adding a bass line created on the guitar and played through a bass amp emulator. He didn't think much of it at the time, just another musical idea among many. He dubbed copies onto cassettes to give to the other band members. He titled the cassette demo Mexican Reggae, referencing the unusual hybrid of sounds. When Felder played the demo for Henley and Frey, they were immediately captivated. It didn't sound like anything the Eagles had done before. It was atmospheric, cinematic, and deeply mysterious. Henley, in particular, heard the potential for something significant. He recognized that this music, with its evocative blend of beauty and unease, could be the perfect vessel for the lyrical themes they wanted to explore. He told Felder, "You need to finish this." The task now was to build a story, an allegory, around Felder's haunting soundscape. Henley and Frey began the arduous process of crafting the lyrics. This was not a quick task. It took months. They envisioned a narrative, a story of a weary traveler arriving at a seemingly idyllic haven, only to discover it's a place of subtle horrors, a luxurious prison from which escape is impossible. They drew inspiration from various sources: the surreal imagery of films like The Twilight Zone, the literary allegories of writers like John Fowles, whose novel The Magus explored themes of illusion and psychological entrapment on a remote island, and their own direct observations of the Los Angeles music scene. The parties, the personalities, the underlying sense of desperation beneath the glitter. Henley specifically mentioned wanting to write lyrics like a film, creating visual scenes that unfolded in the listener's mind. Henley, the band's primary lyricist, focused on creating vivid, almost cinematic imagery. He wanted the lyrics to function like scenes in a movie, painting a picture that was both alluring and unsettling. The opening lines set the stage perfectly. On a dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair, warm smell of colitas rising up through the air. The dark desert highway immediately evokes a sense of journey, isolation, and perhaps a descent into the unknown. The cool wind offers a moment of sensory pleasure, but the warm smell of colitas introduces the first note of ambiguity. Colitas is Spanish slang, variously interpreted as referring to the buds of the cannabis plant, or, more benignly, to desert flowers. Henley himself has been somewhat coy, suggesting it means little tails in Spanish, perhaps referring to the tips of the plant. This ambiguity is deliberate. It hints at something illicit, something intoxicating, just beneath the surface, clouding the narrator's judgment from the very start. Up ahead in the distance, I saw a shimmering light. My head grew heavy and my sight grew dim. I had to stop for the night. The traveler is drawn towards the light, a beacon in the darkness, a promise of rest and refuge. But his senses are already failing him. Is it fatigue from the long drive, or something else clouding his perception? The need to stop for the night feels less like a choice and more like a compulsion, as if the light itself is pulling him in. The arrival at the hotel is described with a mixture of awe and foreboding. There she stood in the doorway. I heard the mission bell, and I was thinking to myself, this could be heaven, or this could be hell. The woman in the doorway is the gatekeeper, the siren figure, alluring and perhaps dangerous. The mission bell evokes California's Spanish colonial past, adding a layer of historical resonance, perhaps suggesting old, deep-seated forces at play, a connection to a deeper, perhaps cursed, history of the land itself. The stark dichotomy, heaven or hell, immediately establishes the central tension of the song. Paradise and damnation are presented as two sides of the same coin, indistinguishable upon arrival. Then she lit up a candle, and she showed me the way. There were voices down the corridor. I thought I heard them say. The candle offers illumination, but it's a flickering, uncertain light, perhaps suggesting a false or misleading guidance. The voices are disembodied, ghostly, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. What they say introduces the hotel's strange philosophy. Welcome to the Hotel California, such a lovely place, such a lovely place, such a lovely face. Plenty of room at the Hotel California. Any time of year, you can find it here. The repetition, the slightly vacant cheerfulness echoed by the backing vocals, feels less like genuine hospitality and more like a practiced, sinister sales pitch. It sounds inviting, but the sheer abundance, plenty of room, any time of year, hints at a place that's easy to enter but perhaps hard to leave. It suggests a place that consumes rather than shelters. The next verse delves deeper into the character of the hotel's mysterious hostess. Her mind is Tiffany twisted. She got the Mercedes-Benz. She got a lot of pretty, pretty boys she calls friends. This is a portrait of jaded, materialistic luxury. Tiffany twisted suggests a mind warped by expensive possessions, perhaps implying a superficiality and coldness akin to the famous jewelry brand. Mercedes-Benz is a clever pun, linking the luxury car brand with the Benz, the painful, disorienting condition divers get from surfacing too quickly, implying a sickness brought on by rapid ascent into wealth and status, a spiritual disorientation caused by excessive materialism. The pretty, pretty boys she calls friends are the entourage, the hangers-on drawn to the allure of wealth and beauty, disposable companions in a superficial world, perhaps hinting at the transactional nature of relationships within this sphere. How they dance in the courtyard, sweet summer sweat. Some dance to remember, some dance to forget. This captures the hedonistic atmosphere, the relentless pursuit of pleasure as a means of either recapturing a lost past or escaping a hollow present. The dancing isn't purely joyful, it's tinged with desperation, a frantic energy masking an inner emptiness, a compulsive need to keep moving, keep celebrating, lest the silence reveal the void. The narrator seeks solace, perhaps a return to something simpler, something more authentic. So I called up the captain, "Please bring me my wine?" He said, "We haven't had that spirit here since 1969. This is a crucial line, a turning point in the narrative. The request for wine, often associated with communion, celebration, and simpler pleasures, is denied. The captain, another mysterious authority figure within the hotel, perhaps a maitre d', perhaps something more symbolic, delivers a stark message. The spirit they lack isn't just the alcoholic beverage. It's the idealistic spirit of the 1960s, specifically 1969, the year of Woodstock and the symbolic peak of the counterculture's hope for change. That era of hope and innocence is gone, replaced by something harder, more cynical. The hotel operates on a different, perhaps darker kind of spirit now. Maybe the spirit of commerce, of addiction, of pure sensation without substance. The party has moved on, leaving behind the idealism. The sense of unease escalates, and still those voices are calling from far away, wake you up in the middle of the night. just to hear them say. The ghostly voices persist, inescapable reminders of the hotel's seductive message, pulling the narrator deeper into its world, infiltrating his subconscious even in sleep. The repetition of the chorus reinforces the idea of being trapped in a loop, a cycle of superficial pleasure that offers no real fulfillment. The song then shifts to the hotel's disturbing inner world. Mirrors on the ceiling, the pink champagne on ice, and she said, "We are all just prisoners here, of our own device." This is the song's thesis statement, delivered directly by the hostess figure, the siren who lured the traveler in. The mirrors and champagne symbolize the decadent narcissism, the self-absorption of the lifestyle, a world where surfaces reflect only other surfaces. But the crucial revelation is that the prison is self-made. The inhabitants are not held captive by external forces. They are trapped by their own choices, their own desires, their own ambitions, their own devices. They built the prison themselves and willingly locked the door. It's a critique of the very lifestyle the band members themselves were living, an acknowledgement of their own complicity in the system they were describing. The narrative moves to the climactic scene in the master's chambers. And in the master's chambers, they gathered for the feast. They stab it with their steely knives, but they just can't kill the beast. This is the song's most debated and perhaps most disturbing image. Who is the master? Is it the devil, the head of the record label, the embodiment of addiction? What is the feast? A literal banquet, a drug-fueled orgy, a metaphorical consumption of souls. What is the beast? The band members themselves have offered various interpretations, often suggesting it represents the dark side of the music industry, the relentless pressures and demands that consume artists. Others see it as the beast of addiction, the unkillable craving that lies at the heart of hedonism. The steely knives could symbolize the tools of the trade: guitars, steel strings, studio equipment, contracts, or perhaps the desperate, futile attempts to control or escape the destructive forces within themselves or the lifestyle. Some have even suggested a more literal interpretation connected to Steely Dan, a band known for their own cynical take on the LA scene, possibly referencing a line in Steely Dan's "Everything You Did." Turn up the Eagles, the neighbors are listening. The chilling part is the futility. Despite all efforts, stab it. The beast just can't be killed. It endures, demanding sacrifice, forever hungry. It's an image of a ritualistic struggle against an internal or systemic darkness that ultimately proves insurmountable. The final verse brings the narrator's journey to its terrifying conclusion. Last thing I remember, I was running for the door. I had to find the passage back to the place I was before. The traveler finally realizes the true nature of the hotel and attempts to escape, to return to a state of innocence or normalcy, the life he had before the shimmering light lured him in. "Relax," said the nightman. "We are programmed to receive. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave." The escape is blocked. The nightman, another enigmatic figure, perhaps a concierge, perhaps a more sinister gatekeeper, delivers the final, chilling verdict. The hotel is not just a physical place. It's a system, a program, a way of life that alters you fundamentally. Entry implies acceptance of its terms. The illusion of freedom, check out any time you like, is shattered by the inescapable reality: you can never leave. It's the ultimate trap, a perfect metaphor for the way fame, addiction, or the relentless pursuit of the American dream can consume an individual, making escape seem impossible even when the door appears to be open. You can stop participating, you can physically depart, but the experience changes you forever. A part of you remains trapped within those mirrored walls. The song concludes with the legendary guitar solo, a breathtaking duel between Don Felder and Joe Walsh. Recorded over 3 days, meticulously crafted and harmonized, it's not just a technical showcase, it's the emotional climax of the narrative. Felder starts with a more melodic, structured approach, outlining the chord changes with arpeggios and tasteful bends, while Walsh answers with his signature raucous, bluesy bends, slide-like flourishes, and unpredictable phrasing. They trade intricate lines, building in intensity, their styles complementing and challenging each other, creating a conversation between two distinct guitar voices. The solo expresses the anguish, the desperation, and the trapped energy described in the lyrics. It's the sound of the prisoners raging against their invisible bars, a final wordless cry from within the walls of the Hotel California, fading out slowly over the repeating chord progression, leaving the listener suspended in its unresolved tension. When Hotel California, both the single and the album, were released in late 1976 and early 1977, the impact was immediate and monumental. The song shot to #1 on the Billboard charts and became a global sensation. The album sold millions upon millions, eventually becoming one of the best-selling albums of all time, winning the Grammy Award for Record of the Year. Its sound, meticulously produced by Bill Szymczyk, blending rock with reggae rhythms, particularly in the bass line provided by Randy Meisner, and that unforgettable guitar work, defined the polished, sophisticated, yet slightly world-weary sound of late 70s rock, often referred to as AOR, or album-oriented rock. But its success also amplified its mystery. Listeners were captivated by the song's haunting atmosphere and cryptic lyrics. What did it all mean? The band offered clues, explaining it was an allegory about the hedonism and excesses they observed in California, a commentary on the dark side of the American dream. Henley described it as a journey from innocence to experience. Frey called it their interpretation of the high life in Los Angeles. They spoke about the pressures of the music business, the feeling of being consumed by success. Yet the public's imagination ran wild. Theories proliferated. Some claimed it was about a specific, real hotel, perhaps one haunted by ghosts or run by a strange cult. The image on the album cover, a photograph of the Beverly Hills Hotel taken at sunset by David Alexander, only fueled this speculation, despite the band insisting it was merely meant to capture a certain alluring, yet slightly sinister, California vibe, the promise of paradise tinged with the melancholy of dusk. More outlandish theories emerged. Was it about Anton LaVey's Church of Satan, which was founded in California? Was the master Satan himself? Was the beast a literal demon? Some tried to find hidden messages by playing the record backward. These interpretations, though dramatic, largely missed the subtlety of the allegory. The horror of Hotel California wasn't supernatural. It was deeply human, deeply psychological. The beast was the darkness within, the destructive potential of unchecked desire and ambition. The song's ubiquity paradoxically made its dark message easier to ignore. Played constantly on the radio, stripped of the context of the album, the haunting melody and catchy chorus often overshadowed the chilling narrative. It became, for many, simply a great driving song, a piece of atmospheric rock, its deeper allegorical meaning lost in the shimmer. It was, in a way, the ultimate fulfillment of its own prophecy, a critique of superficiality absorbed and celebrated by the very culture it was critiquing. The Eagles themselves were not immune to the pressures and temptations described in their most famous song. The success of Hotel California propelled them to an almost unimaginable level of fame, but it also exacerbated the internal tensions within the band. The meticulous, often obsessive recording process, Henley and Frey were known perfectionists, demanding take after take. The relentless touring, the clash of egos fueled by success and substances, and the well-documented excesses of their lifestyle began to take their toll. Randy Meisner, whose soaring high harmony was a signature part of their sound, left the band in 1977, exhausted by the touring, suffering from health problems, and reportedly clashing with Frey over his reluctance to sing "Take It to the Limit" on stage every night. He was replaced by Timothy B. Schmidt, ironically, the same musician who had replaced him years earlier in the band Poco. The band released one more studio album, The Long Run, in 1979, but the magic and cohesion were fading. The recording sessions were notoriously difficult, taking almost 2 years to complete. The title track itself seemed a weary admission of the grind. By 1980, frayed by years of pressure and personality clashes that sometimes erupted into backstage brawls, most famously an on-stage confrontation between Frey and Felder during a benefit concert where they threatened each other between songs, the Eagles disbanded. Glenn Frey famously declared the band would get back together when hell freezes over. They had, in a sense, become prisoners of their own device, trapped by the massive success they had created. They had checked into the Hotel California, and for 14 years, they couldn't leave. Hell, of course, did freeze over in 1994 when the band reunited for a massively successful tour and live album aptly titled Hell Freezes Over. Decades after its release, Hotel California remains a towering achievement, a song that continues to fascinate and haunt listeners. Its enduring power lies in the universality of its allegory. While rooted in the specific time and place of 1970s Los Angeles, its themes of temptation, disillusionment, self-destruction, and the feeling of being trapped resonate across generations and cultures. It serves as a timeless warning about the seductive nature of dreams, whether it's the dream of fame, wealth, or simply the elusive promise of happiness symbolized by that shimmering light. It reminds us that paradise often has a price, and that the things we desire most can sometimes become our prisons. The song captures the chilling realization that the greatest dangers often come not from external forces, but from within ourselves, of our own device. From its mysterious opening chords to its unforgettable final lines and the soaring elegy of its guitar solos, Hotel California is more than just a song. It is a cultural artifact, a dark, poetic myth, a perfectly crafted piece of American Gothic. It is the sound of the American dream turning into a beautiful, inescapable nightmare. It stands as the Eagles' definitive statement, a complex, haunting masterpiece that continues to echo down the corridors of popular music, forever reminding us that while escape might seem possible, some doors, once entered, can never truly be closed.